Alright, so with the latest update in Lost Ark, they actually made a change that killed damage meter. So my understanding is how damage meter worked is that it intercepted packages and parsed it into the meter. However, now all those packets are now encrypted, which now kills meter. And so far, Snow, who is running the meter, is having some issues getting that working. And the truth is, once they do realize how to reverse engineer the encryption and they kind of understand it and just make meter work again, it's really probably only a matter of time before Smilegate puts in another type of encryption or something else, another way to stop it, which ultimately just kind of turns into a game of cat and mouse. Then eventually it probably just turns into them trying to get rid of the people who do it. Because honestly, even if they try to keep it secret, somebody's gonna yap and just ruin it for everybody. So it's not looking good for meter. This breaks the general silence of meter from AGS. As initially it was like a please don't situation, but now we've gotten to the point where streamers blatantly would ask other people on voice to tell them what the Bible's telling about them, or even someone wouldn't even check themselves. It would just be on another screen. Pretty much as long as you don't show it on your stream itself, they don't really give a shit, it seemed. And because of that, it normalized the use of meter in the West, just like not really punishing RMTers kind of normalized using RMT in the West. Which again is another situation where they basically used on stream and they got no official punishment until they have claimed to have turned themselves in. Because the meter, Bible, whatever you want to call it, is against TOS, I do not use it and I do not condone using it because it is against TOS. I am somebody who plays by the rules because I do not want to risk my investment I have in the game. So anyways, how did we get here? It is common knowledge that meter was not allowed in KR, and as we know, KR is a lot more strict on the rules. But in Western MMO culture, parsing is a huge part of it, and of course we're going to find a way to do it. We did figure out how to do it, and then it started just becoming a kind of widespread thing, but a kind of don't ask, don't tell situation. Like I mentioned earlier, it kind of became normalized because there was a lack of punishment going on for using it. Even though they did say it was like against TOS, they didn't really do much. And so with the risk basically gone, it seemed like all rewards. And while it became more and more popular over in the West, over there in Korea, they didn't really see the hype. They didn't see the value of it, and they didn't really understand the purpose. So initially, I don't think meter had like a huge effect on KR. But as we started to do like the Lost Ark guides, the Nexus guides, and stuff that show damage breakdowns and really show like the value that meter can bring in terms of that, along with just showing your general uptime as a support, which is like one of the hugest things people talk about with meter, is like this is what they get their enjoyment about it, as it's really their only true sense of feedback. And so what this has done is slowly over and over time, KR players have started to look into meter, and they've started to have their own like unofficial meter Discord over there talking about it, which actually leads to them talking about like how unbalanced the game is. So now they have decided to snuff it out, and by doing that, they encrypted the data. As a reminder, China is actually going to implement their own official damage meter, as they are really trying to alter and modify their version of the game to better fit their community, which is really create a desire like that for the West from the Western player base. As we are now like almost 3 years in, or maybe even already 3 years in, and there's a lot of sentiment still that, hey, this game still isn't really built for the West. Personally, I do wish they would just allow meter, because I use it in other games when it's allowed. Like I always run a meter in World of Warcraft, but I will not run it here because again, it's against TOS. I think it is a very valuable resource that outweighs the cons. To have on-demand feedback of what's going on, especially in a game like Lost Ark where you wipe a lot and retry a lot, where you won't actually get the feedback until you actually clear the gate. I think it's pretty easy to see the value and shortcomings of your raid and what's going on. And I don't mean this in a way to like, hey, if this guy's underperforming, he's probably slacking off, you know, harass this guy. Instead, I think if you're that guy who is falling a little bit behind, that's kind of like, hey, maybe I should stop playing a little safe and gobble in a little more. If your raid is actually, you know, falling behind on damage, or maybe, you know, the support stop playing as much healing and go more for damage buffing. And I think it just really helps show the actual balance of the game. Yes, it's hard to get real balance when every class is going to be different, every player is going to be different because of builds and gear and all that kind of stuff. But still, when you have the general parse data where we at least section it off by item level and raid encounter, we can kind of see where classes do excel or not. And something that really bothered me is when Smilegate said, hey, don't trust this other data, like it's not complete, we have our own data, trust us. They just need to show the numbers. They need to show us what they're looking at for them to come to their conclusions, because it just doesn't make sense to what we're seeing. Furthermore, I really don't believe that like meter just creates a ton of toxicity. Yes, it will attribute to it, but toxicity is always going to exist. I think the compromise for that would actually be just damage meter being a personal source that only records you, which in that case, it would probably have to be something more officially done. I think the Bible has been a core part of the Western community and really a big attribute to how we've developed. I do think that having this kind of feedback just accelerates your own progression. Meter has also allowed us to help refine builds, and even KR players have looked into Western resources like the Lost Ark Nexus and our community guides because of that information. I think a lot of people play for the parse at this point. The average person who works a 9-to-5 job, they're not playing the game to do chaos dungeons, not doing to do guardian raids, they're doing it to enjoy the raids. But eventually the raids get kind of dull because you're doing them for months and months on end, so then to enjoy them you make your own fun by doing parsing. Without seeing your own data, it's really hard to see how much you've improved because, again, like you might have LFire this week or last week, but you might be playing with different people. Other people might have been worse, other people might have been better one week. You don't really know because you don't have the numbers, you don't have the actual data. And so there is kind of like a funny take on this, and that this is like a way to protect their whales. As I think in most regions, even ours included, we don't really have like a huge representation for kind of the top spenders to be that great at the game. And that just Meter kind of publicly shows how not great they are. And actually I do think not having Meter kind of promotes ratting a little bit more. I think there definitely will be a lot more people who are on alts or just characters that they don't really care about too much, getting into raids and basically just not playing as hard, like not really trying as hard because they know they're not being watched that closely anymore. And to go a little deeper on why supports really love Meter is the fact that that's the only real way for them to actually get performance feedback. Because the truth is you can get like a noble with a really jacked like uptime. At the same time, you can get a Radiant with really horrible uptime because it all really depends on how much damage your party is doing. So you might be feeling like you're doing something wrong, but actually the parties were just super stacked to the other support's advantage, which is very common if you're really to support. I think it's pretty clear that at this point now we can't really afford to lose more players. I think overall the Western community prefers having Meter and does want to have it. Like I think there are a lot of people who don't use it, but they want to use it like myself. So I really do hope that they take a lot of this into consideration, and I'd actually really love them to have like an actual public poll or something that we can actually see for all the players like they do the surveys. It has been something that has been a core part of the NA community in the West, and it's really how we've learned to play the game. I think that taking away now that everybody has kind of gotten accustomed to using it is going to be more detrimental than it would have been had it been just outlawed from the start. So no matter how you feel about it, if you strongly support it or you're still very much against Meter, now is the best time to really talk about it. They have encouraged it to be talked about in official channels as long as you're not condoning it or like telling people to use it. And if AGS really wants to talk about how they're listening to the players, then you all need to really talk about it. Not just say they won't listen, lol, just who cares. This is on you, this is on me, this is on everybody in the community and the devs, the publishers, everybody. But also feel free to yap about Meter in my comments as well.